volunteers needing or needed. It's very interesting. There's a lot of people who seek purpose while they're traveling. I'm one of those people who, traveling, it should be a little bit of an adventure. It should be a little bit of a relaxation, but it should also, understand the culture of the place that you're traveling to. And sometimes people want to volunteer. And these volunteers happen to come across a child trafficking operation masquerading as an orphanage in Nepal. And just the way they kind of stumbled upon it, and this documentary kind of created itself out of this stumbling upon this fact. It's just always the most interesting documentaries, I think, when we stumble upon a subject, because it seems like we're going in one direction and then we end up in a completely different one, because that's the story that really needed to be told. So international travelers volunteer at these orphanages, and they think they're giving back. They're paying for room and board. Sometimes a week can cost up to $1,800 US, but there's no evidence of where this money's going. Children appear malnourished, and all this is purposeful because it's playing on your heartstrings. You all seen those commercials where you see the flies buzzing around the little boy's head in some other country, and it makes you want to pay 63 cents a day to save the child. They've been playing on these heartstrings forever, but then do we ever really know where that money is going when we volunteer or when we give to charity? And that's the thing. It's like you want to give, but to what end? This volunteer cycle is obviously encouraging these traffickers. They're seeking out children that they can steal for the purpose of a profit. You have these orphanages are filled with these children who've been forcibly taken from their living parents, all for the purposes of monetary gain. And it felt like a call to action, this documentary. It's like, let's stop this. Let's stop this practice. Let's stop encouraging this travel and volunteerism, because this is just it's not what you think it is, because these are the faces of the people that are affected by it. And then seeing the survivors of it and how their lives were taken from them, a majority of their lives were taken from them, all for the purposes of someone to come into their life, feel good for a week, leave their lives, and just the mental strain on a kid to have to fall in love with a person and fall out of love with a volunteer consistently over the course of their lifetime, all while missing their parents, the harshness of knowing that their parents are trying to get their kids back, but will need to buy them back. Like, it's just so disheartening, the whole thing. And I really hope that this call to action calls people to action, because me watching this, it was very striking for me. You're thinking you're giving back, but your efforts are actually fueling this trafficking epidemic. And the most shocking thing is to see the lengths that people go through for money, and how little emphasis is placed on human life, and specifically children's lives. And something has to change.
Volunteers Needed was both shocking, disturbing, and horrifying, to be blunt. When you think of scams and exploitive measures, usually you think of something that's nefarious, but that's blatantly or transparently nefarious. What made this documentary so terrifying was the fact that, for me, this is one of the first times I've seen a scam that explicitly takes advantage of human generosity. Now, there's the argument that when a tourist goes to one of these countries to do this, they're not doing it for the children. They're doing it for themselves. They're doing it for that feeling of feeling good about that sense of charity. But the fact that that sense of charity is actually worsening the problem, that was a very violent wake up call that I feel like a lot of people need to see before they make these decisions, because when someone offers you an opportunity to help someone, the last thing you would think is that your help would hurt them at the end. And that's what makes it so scary, is I don't think anyone who's volunteered in one of these places realizes that they're enabling the problem or making it worse. They thought they were helping, they thought they were fixing it, which makes this so scary and makes it so evil. Just taking and exploiting kindness for nefarious reasons. Again, like I said in the beginning, you would expect human trafficking to be more transparent. You would think you would be able to tell the difference, not realizing that you're contributing to the trafficking, and that would be a terrifying revelation to undergo, realizing that what you thought was helping was actually endangering a child. I definitely think more people need to watch this one, because there are ways to help people, but this has definitely shown that you have to be very careful who or where you're helping, because there's always a chance that there's going to be some nefarious motives towards it.
Volunteers needed. This sheds light on a very complex issue that is volunteerism. It's kind of a two-sided, there's issues on both sides. One which is more or less well-intentioned Westerners trying to make a difference in a developing country, whether it's just to as a means of like having an experience and being able to feel good about themselves, or genuinely just wanting to commit to humanitarian activism. And there are corrupt people in these developing countries that see that and see an opportunity. And as long as people are not really doing their due diligence and not understanding the complex nature that is an entirely different country with different cultures and different traditions and different religions, etc. You're just going in there thinking, well, I'm just out of college, I'm just out of high school, and I want to just, come make a difference. If it was that easy to make a difference, the problems would have been fixed by now, right? Like, you as just like a Westerner coming with your money or with your what skills, I don't know, painting a wall, building a house, like, you don't know how to build a house. Certain things like that, where it's like you feel good and you're like, yes, I'm going to go there and make a difference, and they sell it to you. They sell you this whole dream. But when you take the time and really think about it critically, you can poke a lot of holes in it. And what I like that this piece does is it not only talks about where the problems lie, but also what you can do about it and how you can prevent those kind of situations from happening to you or others going forward. It was really heartbreaking hearing about these kids and the chronic abandonment that they encounter because of these volunteers coming, and they fall in love with them and then they leave. And then the next person comes and they fall in love with them and then they leave. And this happens over and over, and the damage that this can do to a child's psyche is just unimaginable. Not only that, they've been forcibly taken from their home, which has capable caregivers, and put into this detrimental situation where they're not being cared for, they're not being fed, they're being abused. It's just awful, and it's kind of this just cycle that keeps happening. As long as there's Westerners who want to come, there are people who will say, okay, I will, you want this experience, I will provide it for you. But it's really just just a business. Like nothing is actually getting done. And so I think that films like this are really important because it exposes kind of the underbelly of voluntourism. And this is just in one place that we've kind of focused on. This is just one place. There are so many other countries that like this is easily happening in, and probably is. So I thought this was really well done. I think that the finished version will be that much more impactful, and I really hope it gets in front of the right audiences. This is a wonderful piece.
Volunteers needed. Wow. I mean, this was a great, great film. And it really shined a spotlight on these so-called orphanages and what was happening there. I mean, I had no idea. So I found it, well, horrifying, but also exceedingly educational. And I hope that this film goes ahead and inspires a change to stop these child traffickers from being able to do this. I thought the filmmakers did such an amazing job getting their points across. I loved the interviews with everyone. It gave you a nice selection of who they were interviewing, not only the old volunteers, but some of the children who had grown up, who were in these so-called orphanages. I thought that the sound was great. Some of the cinematography in this was just drop dead gorgeous. I mean, they really did a great job. So I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So this is my commentary on Volunteers Needed. So I thought it was interesting how this film was done through a sort of Western gaze, which is what they mentioned as well in the beginning of the film. So you see it, but it being mentioned as well, I think is quite interesting. Of people from these sort of first world countries, and understanding sort of their reasoning for being interested in travels in Asia, which is pretty cool. And their sort of work and the work that they do, and why they've decided to stay. I like that introduction. I also liked that we towards the end of the film, there's a sense of accountability that the volunteers speak about, that, when you sort of enter this new world, and you're deciding to volunteer and immerse yourself in a different culture, that you need to be diligent in understanding, that you're not like trying to come and like fix all the problems, and you won't be able to fix all the problems that are being faced in whatever space you're volunteering in. And that if you were to come and volunteer, it'll be a difficult process. So I really liked that sort of the beginning and the end, that sort of contrast between the two. And for that, I think it was quite an honest documentary. So I appreciated that about the film, and I think it was really well done for those reasons.
I would love to see Volunteers Needed when the documentary is completed. This is clearly a work in progress. It has things like irregular sound. Sometimes the score is louder than the dialogue. Sometimes the dialogue is very, very quiet, even though there is no score. And other times it's a little booming, so it needs to be regulated a little bit. I love the use of animation to tell a story. I think in a story like this, it could be a lot more effective than using stock footage to put over it as people are talking. You can tell, especially if you don't have stock footage exactly from Nepal and from the area, it could be a lot more effective emotionally to tell this story. So the use of animation, besides just in a few little locations, could actually be expanded throughout the whole thing. The stock footage that is used doesn't really make sense to the story. It was almost pulled very quickly, but is what it feels like. But I do think animation could be put in the place of that. This could use with a sound mixer to just regulate the sound a little bit. The wording of the property of the Buddha Productions at the top, and the timestamp is a little distracting, so that should be removed. But I would love to see this when it's finally completed, because I think it's a great work in progress in that the filmmakers are on to something that needs to be told. Mm-hmm.